Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I have a very special guest with me today. This is my business coach of 3, 4 years now, something like that. I'm losing track. He's been incredibly helpful to us. And so I'm really honored and excited to have him on with us today to talk about really important issue for marketing agencies like us in particular, but also all companies at this time, which is hiring and the challenges that go with that. So we're going to get a lot of really good tips from Dave today that I can attest to work because they've worked for us. So we're going to give a lot of good actionable insights and key takeaways. So just want to give you the spelling of Dave's name here. It's a little bit tricky to spell. It's actually easy to say once you know how to say it. It's Dave Schoenbeck, and so it's Schoenbeck. So if you're looking up his information, his website, daveschoenbeck.com, and his email is dave@daveschoenbeck.com. We'll show that again Perfect. Later. And so thank you so much for being here today.
This is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, definitely. So we're going to take questions from the audience. I would encourage you to submit them throughout the broadcast so that we can see them as they come in and plan time for them accordingly. So we'll have Q&A at the end, but don't hesitate, submit the questions right away throughout. And also, I just want to start actually with you telling us about you. You know, who are you? I know all about you, but they don't. So tell us, who is Dave?
Who's Dave? Dave is a professional business coach. I've been coaching for the last little over 10 years now. Previous to that, I was a retailer. I worked in the food and drug industry for years, and then went over to Toys R Us and worked in the northwest part of the country with Toys R Us, and then was fortunate enough to be involved in the startup of Babies R Us. So that happened in 1997, and it was sold to private equity investors in 2005. And I started my coaching practice in 2007, and I've been doing that since.
That was just, he's kind of a big deal. He's a little humble about it. That was just a couple of you that were really responsible for getting Babies R Us off the ground, right?
3 of us that started it originally, and we started with the concept, and at its peak, when it was sold to private equity folks, it was about $3 billion in sales and 247 stores, I believe.
It's not too shabby.
Not too, yeah, we had a good time. It was a great run.
Awesome.
From concept all the way to being a major force in big box retailing.
Yeah, that's so cool. And so obviously, as part of growing an organization that big, or any organization, hiring is a huge part of that, right? So
absolutely,
you learned quite a bit.
Galvanized under fire.
Yeah, you had to learn quite a bit about it, right?
Right.
Well, I've been really impressed with what you've taught us from your learnings. So let's get into that. First of all, it has been pretty hard for us as a marketing agency, and I've heard a lot of my other marketing agency owner friends talk about how challenging hiring is, especially in the last few years. Why is it so hard right now?
Well, the economy is really good, and the media portrays it in all different kinds of ways, but the economy continues to roar. When you look at unemployment statistics, they say full employment is at 5.3%, I believe is the number. Currently, nationally, we're at 4.5%. So there's basically 1% of the population is employed against their will. So it is it's very difficult to find people. It's regional. So states like Iowa and Wisconsin have under 3% unemployment. So it's difficult to find, and particularly in skill positions. So I coach 15 companies at a time, and I would say 12 or 13 out of the 15 have skill jobs that are open, and that we continue to work to find the right people to fill those roles. So I don't see it getting much easier in the near term. It's going to continue to be difficult. From an agency perspective, almost every position is a skill position.
Yeah.
I coach 3 marketing agencies right now, and it's account managers, it's developers, it's programmers, it's graphic artists. We're looking for talent all over the place. So you have to approach that in a different way than what we're used to. We got spoiled by the bad years, the mid 2000s, where there was plenty of people to pick from, and now it's a bit more of a challenge.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when you say employed against their will,
it means that people are working when they really don't want to.
Right, because they don't think they have choice.
Right.
And so that is, a very minimal part of the picture right now because
Right.
people realize they have
hmm
choice to move around.
Right.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense.
So what happens there is it creates pressures on wages, and for all of us that run businesses, which is not something we want to see. Good for our people, not so good for the bottom line. So that there's pressure that way on our economics in our business. So.
Yeah, and I know that in the marketing industry, where a lot of my business owner friends operate, and I'm sure it's the same across many industries, we see a lot of hopping around, especially with younger workers.
Yep.
They know they have a lot of
Yes.
opportunity to move to different positions and kind of wiggle their way up with each one, and it seems like some of them are almost intentionally doing that. So
Sure.
it can be really hard to find the right person and then to keep them.
Retention is critical.
Definitely.
I hope we get a chance to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, let's dive in so that we have time to cover everything. So basically, I wanted to start by, kind of telling our story of how you've helped us and what's been most impactful, both for finding the right person and retaining them. So one of the biggest things that I learned that I was doing wrong at first was I was hiring for skill alone. So I was like, all right, it's time to hire somebody. I'm going to write up a job description, and I need them to know this. I need you to know this and know how to do that and have this skill and that experience. And I wrote it up, and I used that to put out there and attract candidates and evaluate them as such. And it actually wasn't terribly hard to find people that had the skills. Mm-hmm. What turned out to be hard was finding the right people that had the skills. And some of those that follow me on Facebook know some of the horror stories that I've encountered, particularly even just in the interview process, with encountering some very interesting personalities.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Characters, right? That's a soft way of saying it's crazies. And so what I learned, through your help and shedding a light on what I was doing wrong, was like, I can't just focus on the skills alone. Right. It's obviously easy to find someone with the right skill, but not necessarily with the right personality, values, behavior, commitment to our mission, and all of those, that softer side of things. And it's easy enough to, maybe I shouldn't use the word easy, but it's feasible to teach the right person who has all those right values and personality and culture fit and everything. It's feasible to teach that person the skills that you need, but not the other way around. It's not feasible.
She's been listening.
I'm a good student. It's not feasible to find someone who has the right skills, but not the right values, beliefs, personality, integrity, culture fit, and teach them all of that. So I've completely flipped how I look at things, and with your help have come up with tactics and strategies and tools and routines that we use in the hiring process to find those values and personality characteristics and culture fit type things. And I mean, the skills are important. Of course, we don't ignore skill, but
that's the starter.
Right. So I was leading the wrong way. I was leading with skill, and it wasn't even defining anything I wanted for values or culture or anything. And now I kind of lead the other way around. So, so tell us, as far as, well, and I think one of the most important things in that process was learning to kind of work backwards. I was always looking ahead to the end game, like, I'm just got to get that person, just got to get them hired. But you taught me to kind of pause and take a step back, zoom out, and look at, defining exactly what I want and re-sculpting, reframing, I think was the word, the job description that we put out there accordingly. So going as far back as what we put out there in our job descriptions, our job postings. So talk a little bit about that. How do you frame how do you frame the job the right way from the get-go?
Okay. First off, from the old job description as we know it today, there's never any soul or character in any job descriptions. And the more you can make that a representation of what your culture is like and the attitude that you have, some of them are funny, some are interesting. That's what sells, and that stands out from all your competition for those people. But really, the job description is really only job one, because that is an outbound document that goes to potential candidates. But the real important thing is to develop what I've referred to as a positional contract, and the lawyers hate that term, but let's call it a performance agreement.
I like it, whatever you call it, because I know it works.
So a positional contract is like a job description on steroids, and it includes some interesting things that job descriptions don't have. So why this job exists, which is really important. And maybe I should start and say the positional contract has as much benefit for the business owner, the agency owner, than as it does for the candidate. So in the end, this is an agreement that they're going to sign that says this is what I'm signing up for the job. But for the clarity for the agency owner is I finally have in one place all the things that I was thinking about this job. So the things that you know in your heart, but you never put in a job description.
Right, those non-skill things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So why does this position exist? Skills, duties, the typical job description things go in there. But what I really try and get people to think about is what are the values and beliefs and the softer people side that we need to include in this. So what are we really looking for? How should this be a trustworthy person? Should it be loyal? Do they have to get along with customers? So you have to write out that list. And I encourage to do 20, 30, 40 descriptors because that really helps you decide it. There's a book by, I think his name's Darren Hardy, and it was The Compound Effect. And it's kind of psychobabblish, but the idea behind it was when you tell yourself what's important, when you tell yourself what you're looking for, you will find that in the marketplace. And
it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
And I've seen it time and time again where one of my clients will say, I can't find a person for this job. We go through this process, and guess what? We do find somebody because it's clearer to he or she what they're really looking for. And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, it was a really interesting process to go through, and it really did work. I kind of always figured it was a given. Like, of course, I want someone ethical. I want someone who knows how to, communicate internally with coworkers in a respectful manner to resolve conflict. But, I just figured I was kind of naturally looking for those things. I didn't have to state it on paper, but it was an interesting effect when I stated it on paper and actually included.
Right.
So when we made the positional contract, I ended up using about 2/3 of it, all of the kind of non-internal stuff as the job description with all that non-skill stuff in it.
Right.
And it really did work to attract the right kind of people that resonated with those non-skill things I was saying.
Right.
That I always just kind of operated as, well, that's a given. Of course I want that. But there was an effect to putting it on paper and putting it out there in the job description. It seems to attract the right kind of people.
Yeah, when you really think about it, it's kind of like an iceberg. So the tip of the iceberg, what is it? 15% of the ice is above the waterline. And when you think about people, that is the actions and the behaviors that you see. But what's underlying or under the waterline is beliefs and values. And until we really understand what their beliefs and values are, you really don't know the person.
Right. But that brings up a good question. So we've now defined the beliefs and values that we want the person to have. We've put that out there, and some of those candidates are being attracted to us. But how then do you weed through all the candidates to figure out whether they really do have the values?
It's all the interviewing practice that we've done.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, looking back, I thought I was doing just fine, but I learned a lot about interviewing from him and how to dig into someone's values and belief systems. And, I guess the kind of negative word for it would be trick questions, but interesting questions to ask that get people talking. They don't even really realize it. It gets them talking about
an interview situation.
Beliefs.
They're like this. They're going to only show you what they want to, but once the skills and abilities are identified, then it's really about, does this person fit in my business?
Right.
And how do I know that soon? So the best way to do it is to ask them questions about what they believe in. So, for example, you don't want to ask them about the candidate's beliefs. You want to ask them about people that they admire or they dislike.
Right. Yeah, I found that really works. Get them talking about other people. Because if you say, "Are you an ethical person?" They're going to say yes.
Super.
But tell me about the most ethical person you've ever had,
right.
The best manager or supervisor that you felt had the biggest, most upstanding ethics.
Right.
What was that person like? And then, asking other similar questions, you start to hear running themes in what they're saying. That's like, wow, this person really cares about ethics or this or that.
Yeah.
It's
so the great question is the last time in your last job where you had a team project, who is the leader of the team? And what did you like about her or not? And they'll can you think of somebody? Oh yeah, I know. And here's what you like and what you don't like. Okay, so what kind of person in that team made you crazy? and they'll tell you exactly that. So you're starting to frame what their
Mm-hmm.
values are. If you just make yourself quick notes, you can identify what they respect and what they dislike, because what they say is what their filter system is, and that's what we really want to know.
Right.
Conversely, you can say, of all the leaders, who's your favorite boss, and what did you like about her, and and your worst boss. Again, more framing questions.
And you start to hear like this running theme throughout their answers when you ask about different situations like that and other people, get them talking about other people that they like and dislike and why. It's fascinating. You start to hear the same running things.
Exactly.
I didn't like them because they were a micromanager. I didn't like them because they didn't give me enough help, or whatever it is. It's just like the same over and over again. It's fascinating.
So in a half an hour, you know exactly what their value system is, what they believe to be true. And you can start building a profile and see if that's going to have the right fit and the right chemistry in your business.
One of the most helpful things that you helped me do was craft those questions based off of the positional contract. So it keeps coming back around to that. So that initial definition of exactly what I wanted, we sat and we looked at each point and came up with those trick questions. I don't want to call them that because it sounds negative. Those creative questions. Insightful. Those creative questions that get people talking about other people, but at the same time uncover their values. But crafting those off of those items on the positional contract that talk about values was, really how I vetted what I was looking at.
There's two other components of that I should mention about the positional contract. And I think we're going to have a downloadable asset or something.
Yeah, I'm happy to share the one that we came up with Dave's help. It sampled, taking out certain sensitive information or whatever, but because we do eventually have the person sign it and put their name in and everything. So we're going to have, we have a sample that you can use as a template of sorts. It's unique to us because it's all the different values things that we came up with together, but it's a good example and demonstration of exactly what we're talking about here and exactly what we use. So ultimately, we're going to put that up on Dave's website, but for now, just email us, pam@pamandmarketing.com or dave@daveschoenbeck.com, and we'll happily send you that example from what we came up with.
Two other things I want to mention about the positional contract. One is you establish goals for the job right from the beginning. So what do they need to accomplish within 30, 60, 90, 1 year? So it doesn't have to be complete, but it has to frame where you're going with this individual, because they're in essence signing up for that job and that I will attain those goals. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, that's very important. And we found that, when we cross over into the retention topic, performance reviews and constant feedback and whatnot is all part of that. But if you lay that out on day one in the positional contract, it's almost like the framework for the performance reviews. And you're literally on the same page with the person from day one as to what is exactly is expected and how exactly you're going to check in on that, how often. It's just great being literally on the same page about everything, the skills, the values, and the goals and performance targets.
The other thing I like to have my clients put in there, and it is especially effective for marketing agencies, is here's the behavioral expectations. So here's how we're going to act when things get crazy. How are we going to respect each other? We're not going to be political. We're not going to backstab each other. We're going to laugh when we need to as a stress reliever. Whatever those statements are for the individual agency owner, you should put that in, because that lays the groundwork for how we're going to behave together. And
I think that's really what evaluates the culture fit. So, we have a section in ours for personality requirements and then behavioral requirements, and they're very different because the personality is more the values, the ethics, things like that. But the behavioral is the culture fit stuff. How do we treat our coworkers? How do we resolve conflict? What do we do when the stuff hits the fan? How do we respond? How do we respond to a client who's upset? Those kinds of things are that's the culture fit. That's how you've found someone that will behave the way you want them to behave on your behalf when they're in front of a client or coworkers.
And culture is really important. I read something recently that culture is who we hire, who we fire, who we promote, and who we write up.
Ooh.
That's how our employees, our teammates see the culture. And culture is really
from their point of view. Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
And culture is really the byproduct of consistency. So if what you need cultures will flourish where there's predictability, that this is how we do things, this is how we act with each other, this is how it works.
This is how we react. One of the big ones for us is our kind of culture behavioral protocol for when you've made a mistake. You know, the clear defined protocol in the cultural behavioral section is if you've made a mistake, simply let us know ASAP. Ideally come to us with an already, crafted suggestion for how to fix it, or maybe you already have fixed it, but just own up early with a plan, and we will not react overly negatively to you so long as you do that. Don't try to hide it. Don't try to cover it up. Just own up, say what you did to fix it or what you're going to do to fix it, and we won't react. It's a promise both ways. If you do this, we will not react overly negatively with you. And it really does work. People on my team come to me, they're like, per protocol, I made a mistake. I'm letting you know this is what I did or what I'm going to do to fix it, and just letting you know. And I'm like, great, that's all I ever ask for. It really works. So the positional contract, obviously a running theme throughout, and it will continue to be when we get to retention too. But one more thing before we get to retention, as part of finding, hiring the right person, vetting the right person. There's one other thing you've helped us with besides the interviews, upping my interview skills by a million. The other thing is the assessments. So talk a bit about where that fits in the vetting process.
In the hiring process, and maybe I should just talk through what that hiring process ought to look like. So first off, the first step in a hiring process for an agency or marketing business is the initial screening. So we all do that. All right. So we're checking the web. We're looking at Facebook. We're trying to find out what these people are all about. And that really starts generally with a resume or a work history. So then second step, phone or video interview. It's easy to do phone interviews, better to do video interviews. You really get a picture of what they look like. Are they making contact?
Are they bouncing on an exercise ball during the interview?
That's right.
Not that I've had that happen.
You've had some weirder ones than that.
Are they driving actively while on? Sorry, go ahead.
So once we do that, then it moves to an in-person interview like we always do. And the big watchword there is, will this person fit in my organization? Are they a cultural chemistry match with my team and what my beliefs are? So after that interview, if we like what the person, or we have some finalists, we want to do a behavioral assessment on them, or a skills-based assessment. So we use a DISC profile, which is a way to understand what their communication style is, so we know their personality type and see if that's going to fit within our business. We do a motivators assessment, which is what are you passionate about? What drives your behavior? So we know how they communicate and what makes them, what drives them to be influential. Then there's skill-based, there's a bias assessment, there's a sales assessment, there's emotional intelligence. So based on what we see. Right.
Most of what we've done with Dave is the DISC, the DISC assessments, and the motivators assessments, and kind of as a combo. And it's really, really interesting because over time we've kind of developed profiles for different positions that just work really well in that role and that we want to attract. And so like certain positions are more behind the scenes, just, quietly churn things out, don't really have to and don't want to interface with clients. And then other positions are the exact opposite. So we look for different DISC profiles and motivator profiles in those assessments for the different positions. And, it's kind of, it fulfilled something I always wish I was able to do, was like how to kind of almost clone myself in a way for certain roles.
We know your profile.
And so now we know my profile and I can, pick someone who's as close of a match as possible to me for those certain positions, and people who are opposite of me for the other positions, which is equally important. So that's been hugely helpful as well.
So in-person interviewing and our gut instinct and our experience level, and do I like this person? That I don't want to ever mark that down, because that's really important. But why not use proven science to enhance your potential? And there's pure economics on that. So if you turn somebody over, the average in the U.S. is that was reported was $10,500 in lost time, training, salary, start all over, and realistically, I think that's probably pretty true. Depends
Yeah.
on the level of the position. So I think the stat was 66% of big businesses say that their costs were over 25,000. So
Yeah.
there's a big cost and disruption to the business. So why
Right.
not be more careful about that?
Absolutely.
You know,
For us, and I think other small marketing agencies like us, where the owner does all the business development, when I'm training a new person, I am taken off the street and I'm not networking and I'm not, generating sales. So it's an opportunity cost on top of the literal money I've paid this person while I'm training them and whatnot. So it's absolutely economically worth it to be more careful about this stuff from the get-go.
So the next step in the hiring process is an audition. So why not bring that person in, pay them for a day, and have them shadow one of your people, watch how they work, see how they interface. And very few of us want to do that because it's intrusive and it's disruptive. But you know what? It works.
Yeah, it really does. We always, whenever possible, we get some sample work first, and it's extremely enlightening because some people put on a very good show during the interview process, and then you get their work and you're like, who, what?
Here's another little tip. Whenever you have a choice, take the person that's the better writer and the better communicator.
Interesting.
Yeah. So if you have two that are the same, because that person usually wins.
Interesting. Okay. I could see that. I mean, with the way that, pro tip. I could see that with the way that communication is, in technology, we're just constantly communicating, even if it's just internally amongst coworkers, we're probably using something like Slack, Instant Messenger, or whatever, those communication skills and being clear. And, that makes a lot of sense.
So we get to final decision, we make an offer letter, all that. Everybody does that. But then at the same time, you need to plan their orientation or their assimilation into your business. And that step usually gets cut out. And if we're in the retention game to try and avoid that 10,500 per turnover, a little extra time in the orientation and some thought behind that is money well spent. Because many of us can remember some of the jobs that we took where it was baptism under fire. We were thrown into an organization or a job and we didn't know where the bathroom was. We didn't know how things worked. Who's important around here? How do I get things done? And that's probably the biggest question, the questions that they have. So money well spent. Now that's pro tip too.
There you go. That does make sense because there is a bit of a fatigue to the process by the time you've selected that person. It's kind of tempting to just take your foot off the gas then and be like, okay, here you go. But that extra planning, giving them the tools they need to quickly start succeeding is hugely important.
Yes.
I forgot to mention too, the assessments, we were talking about that. You also have a sample, one of those on your website, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll email out the link to everyone afterwards with the link with the sample positional contract and the sample assessment, so you can see exactly what we are talking about. All right, so we've found the right person. We've gone through this 8-step vetting process. Well, we started in the beginning by framing the job correctly, not just skills. Now we've gone through an 8-step vetting process with crafty, creative interview questions, assessments, auditions, everything you laid out. Now we've got the person. We plan their orientation. We're integrating them. How do we keep them?
That's the most important thing. Because there's an economic reason for it and a disruption reason, and we certainly want to keep them. But in order to understand it, most marketing agencies are going to attract younger, creative people. So we're talking about a different type of individual, and I'm not going to millennial bash because I don't want to do that. In fact, I find some really interesting things about the new age worker that is important to our workplace, and frankly, we should have been maybe more like us baby boomers could have learned from. So let's talk about what's really important to the new age worker / millennials. So first and foremost is you got to be ready to provide feedback. They want constant strokes, and they also want constructive criticism. So it's very important to them. That's the way these people were raised. So let's make sure that we do that.
Yeah, why just complain about it? Like, embrace it and use it. So I hear a lot of people complain about that characteristic of the new age worker, but why not just run with it, give them what they need, and they can blossom. I've seen people who work for us really blossom into some really effective employees.
I think they
get what they need.
They're better conditioned to react to feedback than maybe we were. When I was coming through, I'm a baby boomer, and when I was coming through organizations, if you didn't hear anything, that was good. you were doing a great job.
Right. Yeah.
If you started hearing things, it wasn't. So.
Right. That's not quite sufficient anymore.
So the new age worker is also looking for varied duties. So when you're looking at a potential candidate for your agency, you want to make sure that you are constructing the job so that they can be rotated around. They have an expectation that they're going to get promoted at some point, but they want to do interesting work. Mm-hmm. Don't we all? But the interesting work is probably more. The need for interesting work is more prevalent in that age group. Work-life balance is really important. So we need to set the table for that. Manage their expectations carefully. The new age worker really wants to know that their work matters. Mm-hmm. And I've always had, even in corporations, my belief has been that the power of getting everybody in an organization to understand how their work contributes to the greater good. And millennials need that connection. And
I think everyone needs that connection. I've always said that, people will do anything if you tell them the reason why. Yeah. They just need to understand why. It's when they don't understand why that they're like, why should I? Right. I think everyone needs that.
Yep. New age workers need professional development. You have to have a plan for them. And it's really hard in an agency because you're a relatively flat organization. Right. So it's hard to say, in a year you could be in this position, because there may not be a position.
Right.
So some organizational design would, in fact, some of the really smart people say that our flat organizations need to change in order to appeal to this workforce.
Interesting.
So junior, senior kind of level positions where we've been reluctant to do that in a lot of businesses.
I've tried to stay away from hierarchical positions and maintain as flat of a group as possible so that we all feel like we're contributing equally. But I've had candidates ask me, what does the ladder look like at Pam Marketing? I'm like, ladder? Well, there is no ladder. But I could see how that would leave them with a sense of, I can't move up. And that doesn't, just because we don't have a ladder or hierarchy doesn't mean they can't integrate themselves and become more and more important and work on bigger, better things. Mm-hmm. So I've had to learn to, because I'm pretty committed to staying flat, at least for now, I've had to learn to frame it as, there's potential for you to blossom within, even though it's, not the typical ladder. And that seems to be good enough for them.
Yeah. Interesting. The new age workers are also need public recognition. So it's one thing to say within the company, Sally did a great job on this project, and that's really important, but also outward to clients, that's very important to the new age workers. So we need to think about doing that differently, because that doesn't come intuitively to me. It's in our house. We keep it to ourselves. We'll celebrate amongst ourselves.
Right. Yeah.
But public recognition is really important to it.
I've noticed that people really light up when you say directly to a client, like, oh, it was so-and-so who, because usually I'm talking on the phone and they might be thanking me. When I divert the credit and give credit where credit is due, I really feel the excitement on the part of the team member. Mm-hmm. And, I can see how that would do a lot for anyone, regardless of age.
So that's the audience that we're appealing to for agencies, marketing businesses.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of younger talent that we're bringing in.
So here are some tips on how to hire better. So the first one is, we have to get used to working faster. So there's an old adage that you hire slow and fire fast, which I believe. We're usually pretty slow to fire people. That goes on forever because we want to avoid the conflict. But the hire fast thing has some dangers in it. So fast and crappy is not what we want to do. But we want to accelerate that hiring process to a point where our prospect, our candidate, can see the progress.
Yes.
Competition is amped up. There's more people looking for to hire these people. So you got to be ready to stick and move.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you don't want to lose out on a good one. You've worked so hard to find that right culture and value fit and skill set fit and everything. You don't want to lose them to someone else who's moving faster. I also just find that it's not necessary anymore to spend as much time. It's still quite a process, but to spend as much time and drag it out as big, into as big of a thing as I used to. Now that I've kind of got this routine down pat that we've worked on, this hiring thing down to somewhat of a science. It's he's laughing because I still have a little ways to go on that, but
we're all under construction
as compared to when we began.
Yes.
It's got quite the science and routine to it now. There's just no need to, to delay that disruption, especially if it's an empty seat that you really need to fill. There's no reason to slack on it.
Mm-hmm. Here's another hiring tip: is we need to think outside of the box. And I think in agencies, it probably comes more natural than more traditional businesses. So the whole concept of a virtual worker was, for a lot of businesses, is absolutely no, can't do it. But in a competitive environment where we got to get at people, we need to open our minds to it. I have one business that I work with that was very rigid about that, and now his entire team, almost his entire team, is remote, and that presents its own interesting challenges, but it can be done. In fact, I wrote a blog article about that, so there's some tips in there. But we need to recruit differently too. We need to constantly recruit. You have to be looking for talent in a tough market all the time. You have to have a slow drip on who's out there in the market. What I advocate to my clients is that you should have a file in your desk or electronically that has resumes of people that I would want to talk to someday in the future. So somebody you bumped into in a networking event, somebody that's working for a competitor. I want to be able to picture this individual in my organization. I like them. I think they got potential, but you should have a plan. When I was running Babies R Us, talent was always the thing that kept me up in the middle of the night. So I spent more time thinking about who's the backup for this role, that was burnished under great stress. That had to be important. So I learned that, and I hope to pass that on to my clients, that we need to think differently. We need to have a backup at all times. Who's the next one in there? So,
I've certainly seen the value in that. We keep, at least a small ad out all the time, saying that we're always, keeping our eyes out for new talent. And although we have pretty good retention here, people's life situations change, and once in a while someone moves on, and it usually happens somewhat unexpectedly, and they give the usual 2 weeks or whatnot. But man, have I been glad that I had that little set of resumes to start with, at least. Of course, then we ramp up posting and whatnot as needed. But that's a really, really good tip.
Here's something that is different from what we're used to. Is we always advocate that I need this basic educational package and I need this amount of experience. And I think we're at a point now in the marketplace where we need to think differently about that. There's a lot of successful people that didn't go to college. There's folks that have potential. Also, experience level is pretty much the same at 1 year as it is at 5 years.
Interesting.
So we always said, well, we want 5 to 10 years worth of experience in this area. But if they have the skills, the basic skills, but they're the right person, those skills can be taught. And it's just a matter of opening our mind to that. And it's kind of, a lot of people look at me cross-eyed when I say that, but if you have an open job and you need to fill it, then fill it with the right person, the right individual with a reduced amount of experience.
Right, as opposed to what they look like on paper. Yeah, I think that has definitely helped us combat some of that wage issue that you talked about, because man, are people demanding pretty high wages these days. So being open-minded about not sticking to a predetermined formula of schooling, education, or certain exact number of years experience, that's definitely helped. It gives someone an opportunity who's having a hard time because on paper they look a little different than they'd like to. But they very well might be the perfect person for you. And
it's that first cut where we're cutting all those people out. We can't be so cavalier about that. We need to be careful.
Right, that makes sense. All right, so I do see people have a couple of questions. Was there a few final? You're so chock full of good tips.
Let's do the questions.
Do you have any? Okay,
I've got a lot.
All right,
I talk for a living.
All right, so. Question, how do you feel about referral cash rewards for employees?
It's a great question. And I love the idea. Because rather than us go out and hunt for people that we don't know, to have somebody that we respect refer them to us and to pay a nominal referral award, I would do that all day long.
Interesting. We might have to try that.
Yeah.
I haven't done that yet. All right.
Who's going to know if they're going to fit better than somebody that's successful
Who's
already
already in here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. I like that.
Could
one.
be a vacation, could be cash, could be
Yeah, it could be a
Well, it
non-cash
could be a-
perk or
yeah.
something. Yeah. Okay. I like that. Very good,
good question. Thanks for asking that.
So yeah, thanks. So another one, do you think the New Age worker would benefit from a functional roles and responsibilities assessment or workshop for, okay, wait, maybe I could rephrase that. I think for smaller, flatter companies, do you think the New Age worker would benefit from a functional roles and responsibilities assessment or, no, I don't know if you're asking either or functional roles and responsibilities assessment or workshop? If you could provide a little clarity there, we will definitely come back to that one. Another question, Dave, great summary of what culture is. Can you write that up and share, and can I quote you?
It's interesting. We just talked about it because as we were going through the outline, I don't know that I've written on culture per se. So that's queued up for my blog article. So
blog article coming up.
Yep.
And I personally would love to see you put out an ebook of all of this hiring advice, all packaged. You got so many good little individual articles and tidbits on your website, and one very good ebook, but about a different topic. So to take all this hiring stuff,
it's a great idea,
and put it together.
Because it's something I'm really passionate about.
I'll nudge him about it. So stay tuned for the ebook.
Thanks for the work.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I get to assign you homework for once. All right. So let's see. I just want to check the chat box too, see if anybody put anything in there. Okay, no, so let's just see if you can touch upon this one with the New Age worker benefiting from a functional roles and responsibilities assessment or workshop. I don't think that was meant as assessment or workshop, like which one is better, but just like either an assessment or a workshop. Would a New Age worker benefit from
here's what I know to be true, because
like,
I've done 2,500 plus assessments at different age groups and industries and all that. And what's interesting is that millennials, younger people react so positive. They're so interested in the results of the assessment when you do the debrief, because they really want to know more about themselves, and they're young enough where they haven't figured out a lot of those things. So I would highly recommend that you do that, because it opens the window to who they really are. That little self-awareness and understanding. Yeah,
we've actually done it for people that were already on the team prior to us starting that assessments routine during hiring with you. We've gone back and done it for some existing team members, and they really appreciated it. They found it incredibly interesting, and it helped them to work more effectively, to communicate more effectively amongst the team and with clients. And it seems they were really eager to check it out and see what it said about them. And it's usually creepily accurate too. So it's just kind of fun to, and then we do team exercises too, where we talk about each other's profiles. That was a super fun exercise. The one time we all sat down and did that with you. So that was, I think it had a lasting impression too.
It really is interesting.
How we understand each other. I think we're more tolerant of certain things in other people too, just coworker to coworker. If you understand that this person gets nervous when the details are out of line or when we're winging it on something, the reason she's kind of worked up is because of her personality. She likes steady, stable, predictable, and so it helps be a little more tolerant of some some things, some dynamics amongst the team, and almost appreciate them for that, because in a different situation that arises, you're like, oh well, the details girl will take care of that, in this case. So it really helps us understand each other as a team.
You can laugh about things easier. Or you become more tolerant.
It's a super effective hiring tool, but I think a very effective retention tool as well. So helps minimize tension amongst coworkers. Truly understanding each other's personalities creates a tolerance and an even appreciation for. In the end,
the assessment, basically the DISC, the behavioral profiling is really it's the platinum rule. So everybody knows what the golden rule is. The platinum rule is treat others as they want to be treated. So that's the major lesson in it. So all of us, to be more influential, we need to fashion our vocabulary or our message to hit their radar in the right way. And that's a powerful learning.
Yeah.
When you learn how to do that, you can be a lot more influential in your personal life and your business life.
As a leader in business personally and in sales too, right?
Yep.
That's huge for sales. It's figuring out, what's the type of personality you're talking to. What do they want to hear first? Do they want to hear the price first? Do they want to hear the details first?
Yep.
I like that. The platinum rule, treating them like they want to be treated. It's very good stuff.
Good question.
Awesome. Okay, so let's see. We got one more question here. Since hierarchical is more difficult for small firms, would a new age worker respond to a functional roles and responsibilities workshop? So that's clarification on the other question. Does that make a bit more sense now?
Yeah, but I don't know how to answer that. Functional roles and responsibilities workshop. Maybe if your message was, or your question was about to better understand the other roles in the
kind of org chartish kind of clarity thing.
Yeah, that I could see a big benefit to that. So here is what other people do, and here's their duties, and here is some potential places where you could go sideways in a job, but you're learning something new.
Right.
And in the end, that's what
here's where
they want. They want that experience. They want to be more well-rounded. That Swiss Army knife of skills. That's what drives.
Yeah, that does seem to appeal to them. The more skills, the more they can learn, the better.
Yeah.
So and I would think that would help with the integration process, the onboarding orientation was the word you used. Exposing them right away to functional roles and responsibilities. This is who does what and where you can your options to move. Makes a lot of sense. All right, got a little bit more time. Did you have any other tips you wanted to?
I made a list of some things that we as the owners of the business can do to retain people better. So let me just run through a couple of those quickly, as long as we have time.
Yeah, go for it.
The first off, for us as the boss, we need to make sure that we seek honest feedback about our individual management style. So I'm the boss, you do what I say. That doesn't play anymore in a competitive work environment. So we need to open ourselves up and say, what am I doing that makes you nuts? How do I change that? How do I apply the platinum rule? So I think that's a good tip.
It's a good one. Tough one, but good one.
So another one is that make sure, I love the idea of setting goals for individuals. You've heard that in the positional contract. So everybody on your team should have goals, but what's important is that they're realistic and attainable.
Right.
So often we do these very ethereal pie in the sky sort of goals, and when people can't accomplish them, that's
very demotivating. Right?
It's demotivating, creates anxiety, and at some point they're leaving the nest.
I always try to keep in mind when I'm writing those goals and targets to hit, like how would I feel if these were being presented to me? Would this make me nervous or would this feel doable? Because that can create a ton of anxiety. That could be, I guess, a double-edged sword. It's super effective if they're smart, realistic, attainable goals, but it can also be a bad thing if you shoot too high.
Yeah. For those of you that run agencies where you do have managers or department heads on that, the fact is this, that people leave because of managers, not because of the job.
Right.
So a bad manager, a bad supervisor, and we've all had them at one point in our lives. We remember that much more than the good ones. And that drives people out of our businesses. So if the average business in the U.S. has a turnover rate of 18%, all right, which is really high.
It's pretty high, yeah.
Anything we can do to keep good people in our business. So you got to fix the manager.
Right.
So professional development for a young manager that has limited skills is so important, because that's gonna mean reduced costs, and you're gonna have people in seats longer.
That makes a ton of sense. I can think of so many people that have left jobs in bigger companies where there is a hierarchy, or small companies that have cited their boss or their manager as the reason. They love what they do,
more than 50%.
But they hate who they work under.
Yeah. The surveys say it's more than 50% of the workforce.
Wow. And so that point about asking for feedback on how you as a leader can do better is huge.
And we need to be receptive as the leader to do something about it. If you're getting that kind of feedback back and it's repetitious from several different people, then we have to act.
Ego has to go out the window. Yeah.
It hurts, but
yeah. Well, it's going to hurt more, those turnover costs and whatnot, if you lose people because you're not willing to work on yourself as a leader. Wow.
Another tip is 100% inclusion. And maybe I'm stretching it 100%. We can't share every detail with every one of our team members, but to include people into decisions as best you can. You're still the boss. We expect you to make the decision, but to listen to people and their feedback is critically important.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to them feeling like they understand their role in the bigger picture and defining clearly the bigger picture. It's kind of going all the way back to the beginning when we were talking about defining more clearly beyond just skills what you want in a team member. You actually have to go even further back and define more clearly what your mission, vision, and values are as a company, right?
Right.
So that being defined clearly helps you put out to the world clearly what kind of a team member you want to help you achieve that mission.
You're right.
And then getting their buy-in initially through the hiring process. Of course, the positional contract is part of that, but then retention is letting them see how they're a gear in that machine of achieving that bigger mission, right? It all kind of ties together.
Almost on every one of my clients' timelines, someplace during our relationship is that we work on a mission statement, a vision statement, and a cultural statement. And most people, look cross-eyed at me and that's that psychobabblish sort of stuff. But I believe sincerely that if you do that well, it sets you up for success. So, and with a new client, we're going to start on a cultural document because we got to get that right first. Then it's the vision document. That's what you say to your people. Here's a very concise statement about here's what we are trying to do. This is the business we're in and what we're trying to do, who we want to be. Once you get that, then the customer statement can wait later because you got some other things to prove. You got to prove it to your people and through the cultural statement and the vision.
That's interesting. You focus on it internally. So many people think of mission statement and they think immediately of just talking to their customers. But we're looking at this from the perspective.
No, it's really an interesting. I forget what they coined it, but there's this fancy circle, and it says if the owner takes care of the employees take care of the customers, and the customers take care of the business.
Interesting.
It's as simple
Makes perfect sense.
But it does. So instead of us as the owner working directly with the clients, take care of your people first, and let them do the heavy lifting because they'll take care of the biz then.
That makes a ton of sense. You're chock full of good stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you have any other tips you wanted?
I'm really old. I learned a lot.
You're old and accomplished.
Thanks. Just one other thing is a recommendation to you as the leader is to really pump up your energy level. Nobody wants to work in an environment where it's dull, it's flat, and there's no passion. So and we can't do it every day. It'd be crazy to do it. We're not robots.
Right.
But do everything you can to raise the energy level because that goes a long way to inspiring people.
Interesting. That's a good reminder for me right now because it's winter, and instead of winter, my energy level goes. So good reminder to.
You need a vacation.
I will have that soon, actually.
Do your homework first.
Yes, of course. All right, so let's recap because I think that there was so much information, so much great information that was shared here, but I do think there's a running theme. Like I was saying with the mission, it kind of defining a clear mission and vision for the organization trickles down into defining a very super clear picture of who you want to hire. And that needs to happen at that point prior to the vetting process starting. So there's, those non-skill things that kind of come from the mission, vision, values down into that framing of the job, then putting that out there, the vetting process for, evaluating things beyond just skills. And then so when you've found someone and you've integrated them and oriented them, the retention part, that same positional contract that you've been working off of all along from the very beginning that defines those non-skill things based on mission, vision, values, and defines, very clearly the goals and targets and objectives for performance. Like that makes, just kind of wanted to wrap this up with the point that I found that makes performance reviews, whether you call them that or not, but
Right.
the constant important feedback makes those conversations totally almost effortless and painless, because you've literally been on the same page all along. For exactly how to behave, exactly what skills to develop.
Here's the contract, the performance agreement, lawyers. Here's the agreement. Here's the performance review. It should match. This is what you said we wanted you to do. Here's what you did.
Right. So you take those bullets off of the positional contract performance agreement, whatever you call it, and just like copy paste them onto a spreadsheet and use that for performance review. And what's your simple scoring system with the 1, 2, 3? One is
high, medium, low, exceeds, meets, and doesn't meet.
Right. So whether you use numbers to represent those.
And here's another pro tip: keep the performance reviews short. You do not have to write Moby Dick here. It's a checklist. Bing, 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 bing. And here at the bottom, here's the important thing, especially for millennials. This is what you need to do to move to the next level. Right. That clarity. Because when you receive a performance review, you're looking at you're reading ahead and looking at all the check marks, and you're not thinking. But what's important is to close with, if you want to move ahead in this organization, this is what you need to do. Period. Super succinct to the point. Yeah. A very interesting exercise we did too was to have the employee review themselves. Yeah. So you take those same bulleted items off the initial positional agreement that they signed on day one, copy and paste them over into that review type format with the where's the person at, sufficient, needs work, or exceeding, and let them fill it out. 75% of them will give them a bigger markdown than you would. Mark down, meaning they've scored themselves low. Right. So it saves you from having to be the bad guy. No, but I mean, honestly, it sets you up for elevating them instead of pushing them down. Exactly. Because I've had that where, someone scored themselves pretty low. I'm like, I think you're more than sufficient. In fact, you quite exceeded that. Yeah. And that's like really uplifting. And if you get somebody that's really impressed with themselves, you have another conversation. Like, you're really not doing that well. Right. You might run into that too. So it's interesting. But it's very interesting to gauge where they think they're at, as opposed to, and then you respond to that to let them know where you think they're at. So, super good stuff. Wow. See, I've been listening for the past 3 or 4 years. I might be a slow learner, but good student. Always room to continuously improve. So this was a great refresher for me, and a lot of little interesting new tidbits that I made a mental note of too. So thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Jump on daveschoenbeck.com, the blog articles. There's a tab in there for building a better team. And I think there's 25 blog articles to help you. And it's a good resource for you, and it doesn't cost anything. Yes, the blog articles are very good. We also have those samples. If you're interested, shoot us an email, me, Pam at PamAndMarketing, or Dave at daveschoenbeck.com, and we'll send you the sample positional contract, and we'll point you to the link where you can download the sample assessment that is on Dave's website. So, and just email any other questions you have. If you were listening to the recording, you didn't join us live today, and you want to ask a question, shoot an email. I'm sure Dave will be happy to answer it, or I'll be happy to chime in on our experience with it. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you on the interwebs. Did you really say that? I did. Yeah. Bye, everyone.